share your view that it's our duty to speak. At the same time, I will say there are particular costs being an Indian American when you do speak out. I mean, every day I have all sorts of stuff commenting on my skin color, my race, how I smell, all sorts of stuff that is thrown at me in emails and letters and sometimes visits to my office and things like that. So I do think that there's, the questioner is right to say there is something that is different. That's not a reason not to do it and not to stand up. But it is, it does make it different than when other people are, two people can say the very same thing, but one of us gets a different reaction than the other. So,
walks out by discussing Neal's phone has been blowing up ever since the Supreme Court agreed to take the tariff case, so he has to leave. But I start out by talking about the Statue of Liberty and Emma Lazarus's poem on the Statue of Liberty. It's a very compassionate poem, and they placed it right where in the harbor, where every immigrant coming in could see it. That was the spirit of America. If you look at what Ronald Reagan, George Bush, Lyndon Johnson, every single president has always been pro-immigration. And, they've recognized that there have been problems with it, but everyone has recognized this as a country of immigrants. And I start out by saying that every wave of immigrants has added and helped this country build. Indians are just the most recent ones. And in 1965, this is a date that's really important for Indian immigrants because that is when they relaxed immigration for Asians. And the reason they relaxed immigration for Asians was two things happened. One, there was President Johnson passed the Medicare Act, and all of a sudden, like 20 million Americans were eligible for health care. But the hospitals didn't have enough doctors to cope with this new influx. At the same time, Vietnam happened, and you had all these people being shipped out to Vietnam, a lot more casualties, doctors being shipped out, and a great need for more doctors. So the medical system was under a great deal of strain, and they needed doctors. And so where were they going to go? The medical system didn't have enough medical personnel, so they went overseas and they looked for qualified doctors who spoke English. So they went to the Philippines and a couple of other places as well, but India was a big recruitment ground. So in India's case, they brought in highly qualified people because it wasn't just that Indians were coming into this country because they were looking for opportunities. There was a need in this country for the skills that India had. And as the lady in the last session pointed out, Nehru had invested in the IITs and in all these medical institutes just at the time when America had this need. The second thing was driven by foreign policy. Sputnik had happened, and the US military was freaking out that the US was going to fall behind in the arms race in the Cold War. So they started investing heavily in MIT, in Stanford, and all along the east and west coast in these educational institutions, but there weren't enough engineers. 9 million people had been shipped to Vietnam during the course of the Vietnam War, a lot of young kids. So there weren't enough young people, there weren't enough engineers, so they went on a recruitment binge for engineers, and IITs were graduating all these people, and India didn't have the absorptive capacity to give them jobs, so they came here. So this was a push-pull. There was a need in the US, and India had the capacity and the overflow. So I think it's important to remember that, there was a very complementary relationship here of need and of supply and demand. So I don't think Indians who've come here have anything to feel ashamed about. They should be very proud of their contributions. And I think we need to remind people when they complain about the contributions that Indians have made.